Now, in James chapter 1, verse 23, quote, "If any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass," unquote. Okay, now let's parse this, and let's find out what the Greek meanings are for these words. A lot of times, James, since he's the first person writing the books, the epistles, the letters in the New Testament, he has a lot of things that are taken from the Old Testament or they're very original. And as we've seen in the previous verses, there are a lot of original things that he has wrote. So let's take a look at this verse. Let's parse it from the Greek and see what we have going on here in this verse. Okay, for, if any. Now, the phrase "if any" is used well over 100 times in the entire Bible. So that's not very unique. We look at the word "be." That is a present indicative. So that means that it is now and it is a fact. Is how that is taken in the Greek. A hearer, quote, "a hearer," unquote, is unique to this verse. It's the only time used in the entire King James Bible. Of the word, this is used 14 different times, and I'm going to read to you the very first time that it was used in 1 King chapter 21, verse 4. Quote, "And Ahab came into his house heavy and displeased because of the word which Naboth the Jezreelite had spoken to him, for he had said, I will not give thee the inheritance of my fathers. And he laid him down upon his bed and turned away his face and would eat no bread," unquote. Now, that's the very first time it was used. In the New Testament, in Matthew, he writes, quote, "Yet hath he not room in himself, but doeth for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he is offended." Luke also uses it in his gospel, and it's found in chapter 1, verse 2. Quote, "Even as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word," unquote. Now, we find that Peter used it later in 1 Peter 2:2, quote, "As newborn babes, desiring the sincere milk of the word, that ye may grow thereby," unquote. So we have a sense that this is something that is spoken. We have the spoken written word of God, and that is what James is referring to here in this verse. It's quite plain and evident. Now, the next phrase that we want to look at is, quote, "a doer," unquote. The only time this is found in the entire Bible in the King James is in James. 3 different times. I'm going to read them for you. Quote, "For if any be a hearer of the word, and not a doer, he is like unto man, beholding his natural face in a glass," unquote. James 1:25, "But whoso looketh to the perfect law of liberty, and continueth therein, he being not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the work, this man shall be blessed in his deed." And James 4:11, "Speak not evil one of another, brother. He that speaketh evil of his brother, and judges his brother, speaketh evil of the law, and judges the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge." Next, the phrase, quote, "is like," unquote. This is a perfect tense, it's an active voice, and it's an indicative mood. What does all that mean? Well, perfect means that it is something that has been completed in the past once and for all, and does not need to be repeated. That's the perfect tense. It's an active voice, meaning that it's being done now. And it's indicative mood, which means that it is a fact. Moving forward, the next phrase we're going to look at is, quote, "unto a man," unquote. Remember, James is the first book in the New Testament that is written. So let's take a look at some of the Old Testament, which he would have been familiar with. Quote, found in Deuteronomy 22, verse 5, quote, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abominations unto the Lord thy God, unquote. Again, in Proverbs, this is found twice. First, in chapter 14, verse 12, quote, there is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death, unquote. Again, in Proverbs 16:25, there is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Did you notice that that was a complete repeat? The only thing which changed in that verse was after way, it goes that, and the other one's which. So, this is stressed by Solomon. And then we find later that Matthew used it 3 times. So we're talking plainly that for if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man, beholding his natural face in a glass. I decided to look up in the concordance what it is meant and see what the definition of this is, unto a man. And it's funny that it talks about this has been done to a male, a husband. It does have regard to sex. Basically, it seems like this they're talking about a bullheaded person unto a man, not what to a woman who has compassion. Next, moving forward, beholding. Beholding in Greek, the word is in present tense, active voice, participle mode. What this means is taking place now. It's taking place in that it is either an ing or ed. So, in this case, beholding, it's a act that's taking place. Moving forward, his natural face in a glass. Now, let's look back at what we're doing with this. In a glass would mean you're looking at your reflection. A lot of times we have to remember the culture of what's taking place. In this particular one, a glass meant looking at their reflection in a piece of very highly polished brass. Not like a mirror that we have today, but a very highly polished piece of brass. But they're still seeing their reflection themselves. And that's what this is talking about. Let's take a look at John Gill's commentary on this. Okay. John Gill writes, quote, but if any man be a hearer of the word and not a doer, unquote. The Arabic version here again reads, quote, a hearer of the word, unquote. And so some copies, not hearing, but practice, is the main thing. Not theory, but action. Hence, not the word or the searching into it and the explanation of it is the root or the principal thing, quote, but the work, unquote. If a man is only a preacher or a hearer and not a doer. Continuing, quote, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass, unquote, or, quote, the face of his generation, unquote. The face with which he was born, his true, genuine, native face, in distinction from any counterfeit one, or from the face of his mind, what he thinks of himself. It means his own corporal face. The Ethiopic version renders it, quote, the ligaments of the face, unquote. So this ends John Gill's commentary, and this also ends Discovering the Scriptures, James chapter 1, verse 20.